You do. Anyway, whilst we're still recording,
I think.
Is he going all right after his failed appearance?
Who, Pat? Oh, yeah. He said, I forgot to mention this, actually. He said he wasn't sure that he was supposed to come on because he just thought it was a Lancs League podcast now, where we talk about all the other clubs.
Get his head kicked in.
Order! Send Moorhouse to save the house! Come on, the house!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Housecast, Lowerhouse Cricket Club's legendary award-winning podcast. Bit of a special show tonight, in that maybe slightly groundbreaking, but I'll come on to that in a minute. I'll first of all go to the first co-host, who's just sat in the corner of this room on my mobile phone because he's got technical issues. Joe Martin, are you still there?
I'm still here, Jez. I also have other issues.
What are they?
Well, I don't think they're for this podcast.
Okay, how are you going on? Are you still... So let's, for the listeners, you're in the West End room at Lowerhouse Cricket Club. Change the passcode on the Wi-Fi, is that right?
Yeah, and I can't connect. It won't let me connect to anything. These things happen.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I've still not got that key cut.
Yeah, no, I had to borrow Francois.
All right. So we'll go over to speak to Gary. Gary's on the podcast with us. Hiya, Gaz.
Hey, Jez, how are you doing?
All right, thank you. Yeah, very good. And thanks for helping with the recording then. Because Joe Martin normally does all this, so it's just a little bit of an issue now with the recording. But it is being recorded, so that's all good. Spring not far.
It's been all right. Nice. Same up there, I guess, but nice weekend. Some sunshine, cold at nights, but yeah, feeling heading right way, lighter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're looking forward to it. Can't wait to see a bit of cricket coming.
Yeah, exactly. It's gone cold here all of a sudden, even during the day. But then I think Wednesday it's going to go a lot warmer. But yeah, get to the right side of the winter and get into spring. So I've got some guests on here that I think it might be unique, but Gary's just brought up a topic that there might have been a further female on the Housecast previously. But we're in the Moorhouse family at the moment. We've got Fran Moorhouse on, Bethany, and also Grace is, I believe, hiding in the background, having a glass of Vimto. So if we can, I'll just go probably best in age order. So Fran, lovely to see you. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. This is a little bit strange. Usually Gary, I usually get a bit of peace for an hour and a half, 2 hours while Gary's on the podcast, and I'm thinking, oh great, I can catch up on EastEnders.
He said you listen to it all the time.
All the time, Jez. All the time.
You can't stop laughing. Well, it's really good to get you on, Fran, and to, I'm really looking forward to this episode. It's something we have done a little bit of planning for, but it'd be so good to get into it all. Also from, I believe, down near Florida way, we've got Bethany. Hello, Bethany.
Hiya.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm in Grand Cayman, but close.
Grand Cayman, right, brilliant. What time is it there?
It's currently 2:23 p.m.
Right, 2:23 p.m. Oh, great. Bethany, it's so good to see you there, and congratulations on your new role. Bethany's just been appointed the cruise director of Celebrity Cruises, is that correct?
That's correct.
Brilliant, what great work. And it says in the article that I've looked at that you've now been in the entertainment business for nearly 2 decades. How on earth has that happened?
I have no idea. Very close to 2 decades, but they started me young, did these parents of mine.
I remember down at Lowerhouse, but we'll come on to that. I remember you non-stop performing. In fact, if you and Joe Martin would have been around at the same time, they'd be a pretty mean duo there. They would, because I don't know if you know, Bethany, Joe used to dress up.
Yeah, I remember.
We were around at the same time. I was there for the very famous Joe Beneduccio recording.
Oh, crikey. Oh, it's so fun. Just as an aside, Teddy, my grandson, constantly has me putting that on in the car. And he sings along to Joe Beneduccio. Who'd have thought it? So what's the age difference, Bethany, between you and Joe Martin?
I couldn't tell you.
Joe Martin?
Jesus.
How old are you?
Heck, it's not. How old are you, Bethany?
I'm 32 now.
Joe?
There's a maximum of 1 year between us.
So you could have performed together.
I'm sure we probably did.
You could have put a ball gown on. Joe would have had his
Dicky
suit on and his dicky boy, but like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers.
Yeah. We missed the trick there.
Yeah, exactly. You did. He could have been on those cruises with you. So anyway, Bethany, real congratulations on that promotion, and so good to see you back in that cruising world. I know you love doing it, and it's you're getting some great experience. So fantastic, and we can't leave you out, Grace. Can you shout hello? Oh, she gone shy.
There she is.
Hiya, Grace.
All right.
Yeah, good, thank you. We were laughing. I've probably not seen Grace for 10 years or so, and then middle of COVID. Obviously it was we were out of one of the lockdowns, and I went down to help out to do some staining of some decking, and I saw the young girl on her hands and knees scrubbing away at the decking and painting it, and it was only Grace Moorhouse.
It was, yeah.
A lovely day together, fish and chip dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were very stunned. It was very hot that day, I remember. It was a lovely day. And then on the lawnmower, did the grass.
That's it, yeah.
Put my headphones on. Had a lovely time.
Fantastic. No, it's brilliant. Good to see you there, Grace. And join in. So this episode, we've asked certainly Fran and Bethany to come on and with Gary just to talk through some of life experiences which I wanted to get out there. Now I understand, and speaking to Gary about the journey that certainly Fran's been on for the family. Before we go into that, let's just go into a little bit of background, because Gary came down to the club in 1990. What were your thoughts then, Fran? What were you anticipating at the club, and how did you find it when you first came down?
Right, well, I was still in 1990, still under strict orders, because I met Gary in 1985, which actually was 40 years ago last Saturday. And I remember him saying to me clearly, not only a few weeks afterwards, saying, listen, he said, I love my sport. I love my team sport. Bearing in mind, I met him and the day after he'd broken his leg. So I saw him quite a while after that, most days after that, because he was on crutches and he couldn't go and play any football or cricket or golf. And I always thought he was going to finish with me after the 6 weeks once he got his cast off. But I always remember him saying, in fact, I'm pretty sure we were driving up Centenary Way or something, and he said, I love my team sport. He said, so please don't ever stop me from doing team sport. He said, because there's going to come a time where I can't do it, injury or I become rubbish or anything like that. He said, just don't stop me from doing it. It's all I asked you. And I took it with a pinch of salt. So I think I started my cricketing career in 1985 when Gary played at Lucas. And we had some good times up there and made a lot of friends and kind of learned how to be a cricket partner. And then he ended up going and starting playing cricket at Lowerhouse just before we got married in 1990.
Yes, I forgot you've been at Lucas, Gaz. We never really discussed that. That could be another episode.
I think we did touch on it briefly about Rib League and stuff like that in one episode. But yeah, that were interesting times. Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say then, Fran, we weren't, I made my debut a little bit before that, but we weren't winning anything. But you came down, and absolute no regrets. The kids were there with us. We had some fantastic nights. Adam, Amy, and Bethany and Grace to be asleep on the couches or on the seating that was around the side. I have really fond memories of that. And the girls, your two girls growing up. Bethany, can you remember much about those early years when you first came down? And
absolutely, it's actually probably some of the most vivid memories I have of childhood, growing up on the cricket, and exactly like you just said, being put to sleep, two chairs pulled together.
Not until 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't remember that, but yeah, walking around the pitch with David Wren and the collection box, getting collections for everyone back in the day when the scoreboard wasn't digital, turning the overs around, and it was such a family bond, and it also has come back full circle more recently in the past few years of really reconnecting amid what's been going on. But yeah, it's even down to even outside of cricket itself, memories of Matt Hope taking me and Amy to our first live concert, seeing Steps at the MEN Arena. I think I still have a bump on the back of my head for when I ran up to him and in the bar, and he tried to catch me, but instead threw me over the back of the bar. I'm not really sure what happened there, but I've definitely got the bump to remember it by. But yeah, even out of season, being around everyone's houses and being with Nikki, all the Hopes, like it was very much a family affair, whether in season or out, and I have some incredible memories.
We could talk forever about it, couldn't we? Like you said, you mentioned David Wren there and all the other people that your mum and dad will confirm this, and it's similar now that the kids could go down. You didn't really need to keep your eye on them, albeit you knew that you were always aware of everyone, knew who everyone was, but it was almost like a big playground. How old were you when Matt dropped you? I could still remember that.
Do you remember? I couldn't tell you how old I was. I think it was probably before Grace was born, so I'm maybe about 6 or 7. Yeah. But yeah, like you say, we just would, run wild around. And I think I have memories as well of being given orders from all of you, like to climb over the back wall into the park to go to the Chinese across the road to bring everyone back food.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely have memories of that. Yeah, but yeah, no, so many things.
It always seems sunny. I know that's a really old person thing to say. It was always sunny going back in those days. But I remember there'd be paddling pools out, and and we played our cricket hard. But then we'd have a few pints afterwards. And like you said, it was sometimes got very late before the kids were woken up and taken home. So yeah, some fantastic memories. Joe Martin, you would have. Obviously, you were a young kid when you were down at the cricket club and enjoying everything that were going on. Have you got anything you want to add to the? I don't want you just sat in the corner of the room.
No, I don't.
Thanks, Joe. So we'll move on to the main part of why we've got this podcast together. A really difficult subject. I find a difficult subject, but a number of years ago, Fran got diagnosed with cancer. Okay, obviously people were there, and there's lots of supporting going on, and there's clearly a lot of help, which Gary's talked to me about. But Fran is willing to come on and talk about that. And the reason we've come to wanting to get this onto a podcast for people to listen to is to for people to benefit and for people to listen and maybe learn themselves. I think, Fran, first, if I can just go on to how this has come about because of your appearance with Bethany and the choir on the Lorraine programme. Just talk me through how that came about. And then if you're okay with it, I'd like you then to go back in time and talk through, the journey that you've had from, your first diagnosis to right up to now. So tell us about that Lorraine experience. How did that go?
Yeah, I mean, who knew that out of something so hard to get your head around and an illness like that could end up where last year we spent the year singing with Alfie Bow and Joss Stone and who else, Bess? Marty Pellow, and we sung for the King. And I can't even sing. I mean, I know Bethany and Grace, that's their genre, but they clearly get it off the dad. But I just went with it. Yeah, so it's actually 5 years this week since I was diagnosed. And I remember because it was I'd been in on the 18th of March 2020 for the results of a biopsy. But before that, the way I found out was I used to get ready for work in the morning and I'd put the Lorraine show on and I'd get myself a cup of tea. I didn't start work till later, so I could put my makeup on and I'd watch the Lorraine show, and they'd been doing these campaigns and it was called Change and Check, and they'd launched these stickers and they were putting them in changing rooms with all this just little pictures of signs of changes to look out for breast cancer. And they were doing other things like they took a big double-decker bus called the Boob Bus, and they were travelling around just raising awareness, and then keep showing these little stickers in changing rooms about how to look out for signs of change. And I kept thinking, I need to check. And a lot of people don't know is that my mum was diagnosed at 50 but died at 55 of ovarian cancer. So I was always more mindful of that, thinking I need to look out for signs of ovarian cancer. And so I'd gone for my mammogram. I turned 50 in September, gone for my first ever mammogram, as they send you for when you turn 50, and it was fine. That was September. And then come February, I've been watching the programme again, and I thought, no, I need to start checking regularly. And this one day I noticed something. I thought, that's strange. And, I'll be quite open and honest. And I said to Gary, what do you think this is? And he said, let's have a feel your other one. No, that feels fine. So it feels the same to me. So that was that. Anyway, a couple of weeks later, I felt it again, and I think I've been feeling it a little bit more during the weeks. And I thought, no, that doesn't feel right. So I'd gone into work. There was nobody in the office, and so I rang my GP, and I said, I think I found a lump or something's different. Can I make an appointment to come in? And she said, can you come down in 10 minutes? I said, yeah, it's fine. So there I was within 10 minutes. And she said, yeah, I can feel something. She said, we'll send you for the 2-week turnaround appointment. So I was there within 10 days. And Gary came with me. And I wasn't nervous at all. All the way through it, I wasn't really nervous. I just knew that I was in the right hands. I knew what was happening needed to be done. I needed to check it. You do have to face your fears at times in life, and this was one of them. And I thought, if it is going to be anything, then we'll get it sorted. Me and Gary were there in the waiting room and just chatting. And yeah, I was a little bit nervous at times. Just I could feel my heart racing a little bit, but I knew I was going to be all right. And the consultant had checked it, and he said, well, look, you've had your mammogram in, like 5 months beforehand. He said, I can feel what you're feeling. He said, but you've told me you were going through some menopausal symptoms, and it's probably hormonal changes. So it's probably going to be that. So I'll send you down for a mammogram, but I don't think they'll do it because you've only just had one, and they don't really like to do them so close together. Anyway, somebody was watching over us. We did have the mammogram, and they just said underneath what I was feeling and the consultant was feeling, that was some sort of a hormone change. But underneath that, they saw something that just didn't look right. So they took a biopsy. And from there on in, they took the biopsy. And probably looking back now, the terminology or the words that they were using, they were kind of saying, you know, it looks a bit nasty, we really need to check this out. And so we waited for the biopsy results and went back, as I say, it was the 18th of March. And they said, yeah, it is a breast cancer. It was a grade 3 breast cancer, and which is one of the fastest growing ones. And we need to take it out. And I remember at the time it was like, so this was 5 days before lockdown. But they said, we don't know when we're going to be able to do this. And because we don't really know what's happening. Anyway, luckily it was cancelled from one day to the next, wasn't it? And we were in by the end of March and had lumpectomy taken out. And and so after that, they then decided, because they'd done the biopsy and looked at the type of breast cancer it was, that they thought I needed some further treatment of chemotherapy and radiotherapy. And had a doctor called Dr. Bliss. He was the oncologist. It was a lovely name and he was a lovely man. And he said to me at the time, he said, have you ever thought about a genetics test? And I said, well, I have over the years. I said, and I'd spoken to GPs and about it, and they said, oh no, you're not at risk because you've not enough people in your family that have had breast cancer. Which there wasn't really many people that had it, obviously, but the red flag for him was mum had ovarian cancer, and the two can be linked if it's a genetic situation. So I carried on with the chemotherapy, and at that point, things were quite tough. Going through chemotherapy, and we were in the middle of lockdown. The girls in the industry that they were in, the entertainment industry, just shut. Grace was in Mamma Mia in the West End. The theatres closed. Literally, she was on stage 1 minute and they decided, no, we're closing, and that was it. All the theatres shut. Bethany was on a cruise ship, so she was stuck in isolation for quite a while, and then they tried to come home, and I was isolating at that point. I was in chemo. But they came back. I think Bethany managed to stay for a month, and then headed out and did her own thing, working in the community, did a bit of care in the community, living in a caravan, and Grace helped at home with Gary and me during having chemo.
Okay, Fran, let's just have a little recap on a few bits at points there, because it's really interesting me that I was aware your mum had passed away quite young. When did you start identifying it to the doctors, about your mum? Did you tell them straight away?
I'd always spoke to the GP about mum, because I'd always started having regular blood tests.
Yeah.
Probably from mid-40s up until then, just to check ovaries. There's an easy blood test that can be done to see if there's any changes. Like most women that were getting into, the late 40s, early 50s, I was going through menopause symptoms. So I'd gone to a specialist, even then to a consultant who specialised in menopause, and talked about HRT, and I told her about mum, and she again said, oh no, it's the risk is quite low if I was to go on HRT. So yeah, and again, I've talked about genetic testing with them, and all of them had said, I think they like to see at least 3 with breast cancer relatives, close relatives, before they start thinking. But it was just the weirdest thing how this genetic test was offered to me during chemotherapy, and I was really scared at the time, really scared, because I was in the middle of chemo and feeling the worst I could feel. And all I could think of was, if this came back, then they're going to feel, and they were all, so 2 sisters and 2 daughters, and they ended up being positive to this altered gene. If I was to have this altered gene, because at that point I still didn't know, then they're going to feel as bad as I'm feeling at the moment, because I was so ill. But both Gary and my dad, dad obviously, he's got 2 other daughters, and Gary with his daughters, he just said, no, he said, you need to do it. It's a lifeline. Knowledge is power. When they want to know, I wasn't forcing them. So anyway, I had the genetics test, and strangely, it came back. It was the morning of my last radiotherapy, and they rang and said, you do have the altered BRCA1 gene, which means you've got a 90% higher risk of developing a breast cancer and a 60% higher risk of developing ovarian cancer. So that then became, it wasn't just me then that was going through this. It was Elizabeth, my middle sister, Rebecca, my younger sister, Bethany and Grace were then both all faced with finding out if they also carried this gene, which they then went on to their journeys of finding out if they did or not. So yeah.
I mean, from that, I mean, you go back, you know, we forget about the likes of COVID and how people manage, and, you know, the males manage out of it all. But when you throw COVID into it as well, you were still getting the treatment, and that was still happening, albeit a lot more difficult, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we were in our own little bubble. You know, Gary was working from home. I was in the middle of chemo. Gary couldn't come into the hospital with me at all, so he just dropped me off. The roads were just like a desert. There was nobody out there when we were going. And then, you know, bringing it back to cricket, which I remember, I think it was Bethany that might have reached out to Adam at the time. You know, things were... Gary's been a knight in shining armour. You know, he's got me and Bethany and Grace. We threw all these things at him. It was, if he's not looking after me, you know, going through all the treatment, he was shaving my head. He had a spread, you know what he's like for a spreadsheet. He had a spreadsheet for every medication, every time, and everything that needed to be done. He was absolutely incredible, but I could see, you know, at times that things were really difficult. Just for me, like you said, it's the partners that find it hard. And I think Bethany had said to Adam, you know, this podcast you're doing, you know, you might want to reach out to my dad. And again, I remember being led in bed, not feeling great at all, and hearing Gary speak to you guys on the podcast. It just brought me so much comfort knowing that he got that outlet to be able to try and, you know, do something great.
Yeah, and you know, I remember the conversation. Me and Gary had odd conversations about it, but, you know, once again, certainly blokes don't talk about things like this, do we? We would rather put our head in. But that is really comforting, and, you know, great work, Bethany, and speaking to Adam and getting that out there, because a lot of people were doing dial-ins around that time as well, weren't they? But because of the podcast, it was good to get that going. Bethany, if I just come to you for a minute or two. So you're obviously aware. I'm taking your mum's not hiding anything from you. You're hundreds of thousands of miles away, dealing with what is, you know, the COVID restrictions. How was it for you at that period then, in the early times with your mum, when you couldn't even go back and see her?
Well, no, they were very honest. They didn't lie, but they didn't share the information straight away. So by the time that I did get the call, I was in a shipyard in France. We were actually launching a brand new ship. So we didn't have any guests on board, but we were working out of a shipyard. Basically, the ship was still being built. And she called, and I always know there's been a couple of occasions that, you know, I can count on one hand where I'll get a message and it's like, nothing serious, but call me when you can, you know, of what, you know, whatever it is. Or I've got a few missed calls, like within a certain amount of time. It's like, right, okay. So I called back and she said that she'd found something, but it was like a month previous that she'd found it. So she hadn't told me, but that she was going in for results on that day. I think this is, my memory is a bit of a blur and some of the things, but then I believe it was later that day that she called me and she said, okay, yeah, they've, you know, it is breast cancer, or she got confirmation that it was breast cancer. And in that moment, and I'll never forget it, and I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for it, but in that moment, I was like, right, okay then, thanks for letting me know, bye. Like, honestly, like I don't know, because I'd come out of a rehearsal of something already anticipating that she was going to call me, and I went back into this rehearsal and I sat down, and it was a rehearsal of somebody singing Robbie Williams' Angels, and they were practicing this like incredible aerial routine with these amazing acrobat performers singing Robbie Williams' Angels. And I just sat back down in the room and I was watching this happen to that song, and then I was just like, what? Like what? Like what did she just say? So I ran back out, called her back, and was like, I'm so sorry, like, you know, like, and then obviously got emotional. And then my first instinct was to speak to my managers on board, and I was just like, can I get home? But because it was so, we'd already been given directives that we couldn't leave the ship, because there was, in France especially at the time, like the government was in shutdown. I didn't know if I left, if I could get back to the ship and ready for when it was launched. You know, like, Mum and Dad have never been one to pull me and Grace away from anything. You know, like, they're very supportive, and you know, it was just a decision of, do I fly back, but was it safe to fly back? Like, we just didn't know what was going on. And then within a couple of days after that, I want to say maybe a few days after that, we got COVID on the ship, and we all got isolated into our rooms. So even if I wanted to, I wasn't even allowed to leave my cabin because we had COVID on board.
And what a position, you know. The exactly same for Grace as well. That all this is going through your mind, and you know, lots of people have got stories from COVID which are, you know, horrible and horrendous. But this has got to be up there. So, Fran, the genetic testing. Okay, and obviously, you know, I take it the specialists are making you aware of everything that could happen, what this is about, and the chances of it. That was all being open and honest with you?
Yeah, totally. So for me, what that meant was that there was to be more surgeries. So I then went back in and the timelines are all mixed with everybody else's, because Elizabeth and Rebecca, my two sisters, Bethany and Grace, ended up having their bloods done for their genetics test.
Yeah.
And out of all of us, there was only Grace that came back negative. So she's clearly got her dad's genes. Elizabeth and Rebecca and Bethany, their genetic results came back that they were also BRCA1 positive. So they also carried this risk, quite high risk of getting breast cancer and ovarian cancer. So for me, my path then over the next year was to have, I ended up having double mastectomies, ovaries taken out, once all the chemo and the radiotherapy was finished. And Elizabeth and Rebecca, they started their well, it was a case of preserving life at that point. You know, they made the decisions. You don't have to do this if you find out that you're BRCA. You don't have to have the surgeries. But they decided to have double mastectomies and have their ovaries taken out to reduce that risk of getting the breast cancer and ovarian cancer. Bethany, you had your test, and I think it was about, I can't remember, was it the April, and you were going back to work a few weeks later, but you got your results and it came back that you were positive.
I went back to work 2 days later.
2 days.
That close. It was Grace's birthday.
Yeah. So I'll let you take it from there, from that day where you got your results.
Yeah, so I got my results. They had very much said to us that, you know, like, it'll take some time. We didn't really know what sort of time frame, but I knew that I was going to be going back to work. So this was April 2021. I knew I was going to be heading back out to a ship to go to do return to service. You know, COVID had started to die down. The cruise industry was getting back on its feet. I was so excited to get back out there, but obviously was waiting for these test results. So the genetics nurse had called and said that she wanted to set up a FaceTime, like a Zoom call. And me, mum and dad were on it together, and you know, she basically said that you are positive. And I'll never forget like immediately my dad's hand, it was just like a very gentle like tap on my back, you know, as if to just reassure me that he's here and it's okay, and you know, we're going to get through it together. And but she, at the time I was 28, and she said to me, she said, your increased risk isn't going to, we're not worried about you because your increased risk isn't going to come until you get to about 40. So we're going to keep an eye on you, but don't feel the need to rush into any preventative surgeries such as mastectomies and oophorectomies with the ovaries and things like that. And I knew 2 days later I was on my way back to the ship. So I flew back out to the ship, did all of that, launched the ship. It was incredible. Did it out of Greece. We still had lots of restrictions. Crew members weren't allowed on and off the ships. And maybe about 4 months, 4 months later, something like that, I started to get a rash on my chest. And when I tell you, I have never ignored anything more in my life. Even though I had all of this information, I had all of this knowledge. You know, like we coined the phrase, you know, knowledge is power. And Dad had said, you know, it's a family mission now. If we know about these genes, and you know, we can do things that were preventative. But it was like I'd gone back to my life. I'd seen what had gone on with Mom and everything that everybody had gone through with COVID. Like I was back doing what I wanted to do. And yeah, it took some very special people with definite pushy messages from Mum back home to, when I say they dragged me to the medical centre on board by my ears, I mean it. So I got down there and I explained the situation in the family history and about my, you know, the genetic mutation with the BRCA1 gene. And they said, okay, well, we're not sure that the rash is anything, but because of your history, like we're going to send you to a doctor in the port just to get checked out. We can do a scan, all of that. So they ended up getting me off the ship in Dubrovnik in Croatia. And I went to a hospital right by the port. It was a Marine Academy hospital. Obviously, English wasn't their first language, so they were amazing, but there was a barrier there. So they did an ultrasound on the side where I had the rash, and they said it's fine, nothing's there. I was like, brilliant. And they said, you know, whilst we're here, let's check on the other side. So they checked on the right side, and I could feel the radiologist, getting deeper and deeper, and I had my back facing the screen at that point. So I couldn't really see what she was looking at. And I just said, is everything okay? She said, there's definitely something here. I was like, okay. And then, you know, she had conversations with whoever, and she said, yeah, we need you to do a biopsy. And they'd found a mass that was very close to my chest wall. So, you know, I even asked her in the moment, I said, should I have felt this? Because I was very conscious at the time of everything that had happened with my mom. And from the Change and Check campaign, from the Lorraine show, we were all checking. So I was like, why have I missed something? They said, no, it was so deep on your chest wall, you wouldn't have felt this. So let's do a biopsy. So I went back on the ship, and I had to wait a week until we got back to Dubrovnik because I was still working, obviously, but I was just a blur at that time. Like, I don't even really remember that week when I'd got back on board. A week later, I went back to the hospital, but I had to take all of my things with me. My whole life I travel with. So, you know, like suitcases worth, I had to pack everything up, not even knowing what was going on. And they said, we've got a hotel for you, if everything's fine, when the ship comes back to Dubrovnik, you'll just come back to work and you'll be fine. But if not, you've got everything with you to go home. So I got to the hospital, they did the biopsy straight away. And it was shortly after that I was about to leave to go to the hotel, and they said, no, we're going to keep you here. And we're not going to get the results back for a few days, but we need you to stay here. So that was kind of like my first sort of, okay, something's going on. So then I was there, that was a Monday, it got to the Wednesday, and the radiologist who'd been looking after me, she came in and she said, tomorrow is when the lab are going to call with your results, but it's my day off. So I'm not going to be here. So I just want to let you know, like, the doctor's going to take care of you. He'll come in and let you know around 11 a.m. I said, okay, fine. Anyway, the next morning comes, I'm on the phone to my mom, and I said, oh, there's a knock at the door. I'm going to go. Like, I think this is it. And I just wanted to do it on my own. Like, you know, it was scary enough. And also being on your own in a foreign country, not knowing what was going on. So the doctor walked into the room, and behind him walked in the radiologist in her civilian clothes. And the first thing that came into my head was, why are you here? You told me this was your day off. So, you know, immediately I was like, okay, she's come for support, basically. And he sat down next to me and he said all of these big words like metastatic carcinoma. And I just had to stop him. Obviously, you know, it was language barrier as well. So I just said to him, I was like, are you telling me I have breast cancer? Is that what you're saying? And he said, yes, that's what I'm saying. And it's going to be a really hard time for you. He said, you know, and explained the diagnosis. And then the only thing I remember is he took out of his pocket one singular Ferrero Rocher and he gave it me. He was like, here, eat this, you know, have a bit of sugar. And I just sat there eating this Ferrero Rocher. I'll never look at them the same way again. And I ate this Ferrero Rocher and I was just like, what is going on? Like, what's going on? And then luckily they organized me a flight home. And I got on the plane from Dubrovnik about 5 p.m. I landed at Heathrow 7:30 p.m. and mum and dad were there at the airport to pick me up. And it was very emotional, as you can imagine. Then the next day we went to the hospital by where we live, and they just confirmed the diagnosis. And, you know, we went from there, really.
Crikey, Bethany, what an experience. Like you said, you know, with the Ferrero Rocher and then the different country that you're in. It's almost like a dream that is not real, isn't it? That, you know,
it felt so surreal. And a lot of it, especially after chemotherapy, and anybody that's gone through chemo brain is real, you know, and you lose sort of memories or whatever. So doing things like this is nice because, you know, you piece things together again. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, well, you say that. I think, well, I certainly, you know, can't even start to begin to what you're going through or what you're feeling and how you're managing it. So at this stage, Fran, where are you at with your treatments when Bethany's flown back on that evening from Dubrovnik?
So I'd finished chemo and radiotherapy, and I was waiting for I think I was just about to have my ovaries taken out when Bethany was diagnosed. She came home and she had so you had to have fertility treatment and chemotherapy, and then whilst Bethany was in the middle of chemotherapy, and Gary had to shave her head again, and so he was getting a dab hand at shaving heads. So yeah, there was a lot going on with the fertility treatment and a chemotherapy, and then I was having I had double mastectomy when Bethany was in the middle of chemotherapy. Right. So the house became a hospital again. And the thing is, Jez, you know, and I'd say this every single time, and I'm sure every parent would, I'd have gone through it all again if Bethany didn't have to go through it. But she you know, she had some tough times, but looking at her now, you know, we're so proud, you know, and yeah. I don't want this to be, even though we've gone through a lot, and there's a lot of us that went through it all at the same time. We're all good. We're all really good now. And that's the main thing, is because luckily somebody made me watch the Lorraine show and made me kind of check and learn how to look out for changes that had a massive knock-on effect. It's not necessarily about, oh God, I've got to check to see if I'm genetic, you know, I've got an altered gene. That's just been the strangest thing, and it's not rare, but it's not
talked about enough.
No, but equally,
the knowledge of it.
Yeah, it is unusual that all of us have been affected by it, but I feel blessed that we have, because it was totally different back. When did Mum died when you were 20? You're 26 now, Grace. That's true, 1999, and what she went through and with her treatment compared to what we've been through with our treatment, God, science has changed so much, so much. Just in the way that you are able to cope to get through the treatment compared to like Mum went through the treatment and really suffered but we are doing really well. The message is to really just know you're normal and look for any changes, and act on it and not be frightened of it, because early detection is key, and it's not a life sentence anymore, isn't a breast cancer if you find it early. That's the thing, if you find it early.
And that's what, I mean, we said this, when we had discussed it before we started recording, Fran, people who listen to this, if it helps one person, if it helps 100 people, they pass the message on. We don't, unless it's, affecting you or you listen to a story like this, people will not.
No. And I think, obviously we're on your podcast, and as we've said, I'll be open. I said, what do you want? Why do you want us to come on? You guys talk, you talk about cricket, you talk about, everything that's going on. Why do you want to talk about us and boobs? But listen, guys, whoever's listening, it's not just women that get breast cancer, it's men as well. It's you will have daughters, you'll have nieces, you'll have grandchildren, whatever, anything, just make them be aware. And Gary's a major advocate for it.
Yeah.
And from my side, I would like to say like a big thank you to the Lowerhouse family as well for the support that you guys have given us, but also for my dad as well, because he has just been, I'll get emotional, like he has just been the most incredible support. And I can't even imagine what it would have been like for him seeing his wife go through it and then his daughter. And he's just the most amazing person in the whole entire world.
Brilliant. Here. And when, like you said, just a little phone call, if people are listening and it's not just about cancer, talk about things as you've, whatever made you contact Adam, Bethany, and then all of a sudden, who knows? Gary will have managed it anyway. He's a good, tough, strong man. But doing something like this, won't have harmed anything. And again, as you said, Fran, it's just to get a message out there. We don't want this to sound doom and gloom. This is a good time story. What you've been through is something that, people can pass on and pass on and pass on. On the Lorraine show, just tell us what that was like with the performances, because it seems so much fun. It's a difficult subject, but Lorraine seemed to manage it all. The choir was fantastic. Was it almost like stardom? Was it almost like being on, being in show business? I know you two girls are anyway.
Well, this is it. I've worked in TV now, so I know what it's like. But I think that we ended up being asked to go on the show because I'd contacted a lady I was following on Instagram called the Titty Gritty, and unbeknown to me, I'd been in conversation with her because she was doing a talk about, she'd had breast cancer. She had a big following and they talked about different subjects. And this one particular time they were discussing reconstruction, and I had to make a decision at one point whether to stay flat or have reconstruction or what type. But because I'd already had radiotherapy, there were some difficulties on choosing the right path to go down. And so I was asking her some questions, and we talked about, I said about the Change in Check campaign helping me find the breast cancer. And then I realised who she was. She told me who she was, and she was the features editor or features producer for the Lorraine show.
Right.
She contacted me separately and asked me a few questions, and so I had told her about the family and the genetics. And so I think they probably thought, oh, hang on a minute, this isn't just, the Change in Check campaign hasn't just helped one person, it's helped a whole family. So they asked us, I think we went on the programme in 2022. They came down to the house and filmed us there. We had a great day together, and but we talked about the subject and did the recording, and then they asked us to go, I think that year, to for the campaign to help raise awareness. Again, it was, I think the year before when I'd seen it as well, they walked, some of the ladies that had already found their breast cancer through the campaign walked over the O2 building because it looked like a big boob. And as I said, they'd done this big boob bus that travelled the country. And then the year that we went, they asked us to go along, they did a big hot air balloon because it looked like a boob. So it was all those sorts of things. So we got involved then. And then the following year, she decided to do a choir. So I got involved with the choir, and I've met some amazing women that have had all different sorts of types and stages of breast cancer. And the aim was then to be in a position to start just, again, raising awareness. They had a platform, they had the Lorraine Show platform, and we were honoured to be able to be with these ladies to, you know, share our stories with everybody, and to encourage people to just, again, look for the signs of breast cancer and go and get checked. And through that, I think 23, 24 especially was so busy because we did the choir one year where somebody wrote a song for us, and it ended up getting to number 1 in some chart. I mean, back in our day, it was just Top of the Pops and that was it. But now you've got singles chart, download chart, iTunes charts. It's well, I think I can't remember which song it was, but we beat the Beatles.
It was golden, and it was. I remember because me and Jez had an interaction.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
With the radio. So we'd done.
Oh, yeah.
Joss Stone was singing this song, and it was called Golden, and it had been written for the choir. About just like the uplifting nature of, you know, like life during or life after, and the positiveness that you can find within yourself and from it. And it did really well in the charts, to the point that it got to number 1 on the UK charts and on iTunes. But Dad and Grace have this thing that they listen to on Radio 2. What's it called, Dad?
Mystery Voice.
Mystery Voice. And that week's Mystery Voice, Dad and Grace were like, you know, arguing about whatever. And I said that I thought it was Gary Oldman or whatever it was. So I had emailed in to Radio 2 just to basically see if I got it right. Grace and my dad would be really mad that I got it and they didn't. It was basically one of those. And then while she's speaking to the producer of it was Dermot O'Leary's Radio 2 show, while she's emailing back and forth if you're like correct to go on, he was like, can you tell me something, you know, what have you been up to this week? So I said, oh, well, we've just performed with Alfie Boe at the Royal Palladium about this, you know, singing this song called Golden. And then he was like, excuse me? Like, so basically then they brought me on to talk about not just the song, but also about the campaign. So I was on Dermot O'Leary's Radio 2 show, I think it was a Saturday, and started, like, you know, I got a bit carried away talking about the campaign. And next news, I get a text from Jez saying, I'm lying in bed having a cup of tea. Is that you that I'm listening to on Radio 2?
They didn't even give you a name. I could tell the voice. Your Burnley twang was still there. You talk a little bit posh now, but I could tell it was you.
But it was wild, and one of those things that you're not expecting, and you just roll with it because it's all about the awareness, you know, whether it was us doing the actual show itself in the Palladium, 2,000 people in the venue went home and checked their boobs, or all those people that then on that radio show then checked their boobs. I even think I told him in the moment, Dermot, check yourself because men can get it as well. I think I said that. But yeah, it's been wild.
Yeah, no, it sounds it, and it is, and I suppose it's little things like that, and that will, and it's, you know, it'll snowball when there's people listening, and then it goes to different parts of the country, and and that's why I really wanted to do this and really wanted to get it out there. So Joe Martin's back with us. Joe, you've had a traumatic evening.
Yeah, I can't really say it's been highly stressful relative to what we've been talking about, but I'm not good under pressure.
No, so Joe's been using the club's free Wi-Fi.
No, Jez, don't be like that. That's not why I use it. I use it as it's got good acoustics.
Matt Stanley's cut him off, and he's. Have you ran home, or were you in the car?
No, I drove home.
And he's drove home to get back on the Housecast.
I needed the heated seat on, Jez. It was cold.
Oh, was it? Oh, bless.
Have you missed everything we've been talking about then? If you've driven home, we don't have to start.
No.
Oh.
No. I listened to the recording.
And it's not most of it. He only went 10 minutes ago. Gary, I'm going to come to you in a minute just to see, your side of it. I know what you like. You won't be on for long just talking about it. But I just wondered, Grace.
Yeah.
What about you? It must be so, difficult for you to go through all that, and then you got the negative test and everything. How were you, going through everything?
Honestly, it's all a blur.
Really?
It was a really crazy time in general. Yeah. Obviously I'd been working in London, and then that got shut down immediately as soon as Boris said to avoid pubs, clubs and theatres. Where do you go? Back to Devon. Back to Devon. Literally the 3 places I spent most of my time in 2020. But yeah, so came back home and just kind of immersed myself in a bit of family time, and obviously then Mum had a diagnosis through, and it was just kind of, you get into a routine of going on your daily walk and then disinfecting the shopping when it gets delivered to the door, and then just kind of, Dad did most of the heavy duty work and proper looking after Mum, but yeah, just seeing one of your parents in the place where they're just not well, and they're struggling not only physically but emotionally and mentally as well, which Mum, I think you pride yourself on just keeping strong mentally as well as physically, so that was tough. Yeah. And then I can't remember how far into your chemo you were when I moved back up to Burnley.
You only survived 2 rounds, darling.
2 rounds of chemo, but it was because everything was opening up again. Yeah. And well, not everything, just it was kind of like, what was it, eat out to help out or something. Yeah. And I think you'd said, like, on one of your kind of good days, like, you should either go back to London or see if you can move in, like, with your auntie up north, and like, so then you can actually go out and start doing things, because we were still isolating completely. Even from the postman, it was just like, just leave it at the door. Yeah. And I kind of grappled with it for a while, but then I thought, I feel bad even now, like saying, oh, they were fine, so I just off to Burnley I went. But I think
eat out to help out, and you went and made friends with Tony Woodworth.
Boy, can he eat out?
Yeah.
Yeah, literally. Oh God.
I think to be fair,
I ended up going because I think it was just in general, for me personally as well, I think it was best.
The right thing to do.
It was the right thing to do. So I went up and lived with my auntie and just helped out. My uncle was working for like SES, and they needed someone at the door saying, you have to walk this way. It's a one-way system.
Yeah.
That's it. So I was doing that a few days a week, and then I went and mowed the lawn at Lowerhouse once every 2 weeks or once a week or something.
Painted the decking.
Yeah, painted the decking. So Stan had me, working.
Yeah.
Good. It was really nice actually, because he told me that my granddad used to come and mow the lawn, and then Dad used to come and mow the lawn, or what was it? Mow the pitch? I don't know. The field, yeah. And then I was doing it. So
I like lawn. It's fine.
Yeah, lawn's fine.
Yeah, mow the lawn.
You can tell how young Grace was when we moved away from Burnley. She doesn't quite have the right terminology down.
No, I've got a mix. Yeah, I was going to say earlier when you said, "Oh, what memories do you have of Lowerhouse?" I don't really have too many, other than like refusing to leave the pitch at the end of a day, and then mum and dad just driving off without me, and then me running after the car. And I know definitely dad was batting on the day I was born when mum went into labour.
Yes.
That's
Well,
right.
can
Yeah.
we actually talk about this? Because recently, me and Grace came to the club, and we were having a conversation with Blez and Lindsay about this day, and Lindsay Blizzard pulled up the day that Grace was born, and like like I don't know how you say it,
Scorecard.
Scorecard, yeah. And we actually are questioning it now if he actually was still out there batting, because Jez answered the phone to my mum saying he's still doing really good, Fran. Sorry, I can't go out and get him back off the pitch.
2 or 3 times I rang. 2 or 3 times I said, Jesna wants to brought we tell Gary. Fran, he's just batting. Just batting.
It's
And then
just.
I rang again.
Yeah, I think I said something like, "Just get yourself a sweet cup of tea. You'll be all right. You'll be all right." He's doing what? When's your birthday, Grace? What
25th of April.
year?
Thanks away.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah, so he was
99.
99.
It was
So-
something to do with a duck.
Yeah.
The duck.
Not to be batting that long.
You got 116.
He didn't.
You're right, I didn't.
Oh, bless that.
He left eventually. He didn't miss it, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. I forgot all about that. We could have got that out from the start. No, that's a great story. I love that. We'll go, Gary. I just want to find out, your side and how things were and how you've got through and you're managing now, and then we'll just go around the room just for even including you, Joe Martin. I know you're here as almost like a supporter.
Well, I've had a shocker, Jez. It's
I know you've had a shocker.
not to worry.
Then, we can finish on the happy notes of where they're at. I mean, a little story from me. I'll not forget when my mum passed away. Bethany sent me a fantastic note, and then Bethany and Gary came all the way for the funeral. It's things like that you won't forget. So strong, so brave. So, Gary, how were you? How were you through that? What were your feelings, and how are you now?
Well, we're all good now, Jez. You probably don't have time to process too much of it, to be honest, from your own point of view. You're concerned about, obviously, those who are directly affected going through it and wanting to find out as much as you can. And a lot of the time, and they do say, they'd say to Fran, make sure somebody's coming with you, because you'll be in a daze, so it's up to like me almost to take notes and then remind us stuff and explain stuff later. And so there were a lot of that going on where you're just having to do as much research and listen to what all the consultants are saying, because you're having to sort of remind or repeat about what the various stages are and what the process is. So yeah, it were heartbreaking to see both of them go through it, and everybody around them who connected. And in a way, I've thought about it a lot over the years, sort of thing. Almost in a way, COVID sort of helped, because it forced us to be very insular. We were sort of forced to, not go out, literally, I couldn't even go into the hospital dropping off a trim. I had to sort of wait outside and then bring back afterwards and things. Whereas you think those people who are going around their normal lives are having to try and work, or they're having to like run kids to school or do all the shopping or whatever it is, just getting on with life generally. That trying to do all that on top of it, must have been even harder still. So I'm not saying COVID were a good thing, far from it, but I perversely, I think there were a period of time there until we got into our own routine and stuff, where, because we were forced into a particular situation, it almost, didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, it almost sort of defined what we had to do. But as Fran said, I have nothing but praise for the NHS. The first surgery they went to, it was literally, I think lockdown was sort of like 22nd of March, was it, or something like that? Fran had surgery sort of the 30th, and they closed the theatre down in the general hospital in Torbay, and Fran literally was and they moved it. They hired a private hospital, the theatre. They took over, the NHS took over the theatre so that anybody going for surgery was well away from anybody else going into the hospital for COVID treatment and all that sort of exposure and stuff. And things like that. And they moved the oncology ward out to a different hospital or
Was it a gym?
again, sort of thing, away from and for an organization that size and sometimes that slow being able to move, the way they kicked into action there, and our experience of it at the time, I've nothing but praise really. The breast clinic nurses, fantastic. The surgeons, the oncologists, the consultants, what they were having to just go through as well, generally within their work environment being completely turned on its head to still perform a higher level of service as they can for critical care. So yeah, don't ever forget that when we sat in A&E for a couple of hours thinking, why has nobody been to see me and stuff like this. When it comes to it, these people are worth the weight in gold. Yeah. So yeah, that was all tough. And then I think the secondary thing with the genetics was like oh my God, I thought we were seeing a bit of light, and this is not ever going to go away. This is like, here to stay sort of thing. There's always going to be that threat, if you like, in underlying in the back. But as Fran said, the advancements in the medical research and the treatment and the statistic, Joe love it because the statistical data that they pull together now, it's amazing. Literally, they sat down with it, and I can't imagine this happening 10, 15 years ago. It would have been, you are doing this. But they literally sit you down, they pump a load of data and questions into an application, and it's called a predictor score, and it as cold as it sounds, it gives you your chances of life beyond 5 years, 10 years, etc. If you take this drug, it will give you an extra 2%, or if you don't want, but there are side effects. So all that information and all that help to guide you through it. You didn't once think that you were being bamboozled by science or being left on your own or isolated anyway from a medical sense. You always felt you could ask the right questions and get the right information and be part of that decision making and understand all the impacts. So yeah, we're great. And like I say, I think podcast came along at a great time. I know I sort of jumped on just as a guest briefly once, and then we had a chat, and it was just a case, well, yeah, I'll help out every now and again. And like 120 episodes later, it's
yeah.
It's become a thing. And there were loads of people down at the club. I'm not going to name them all. It might have just been an odd text message, or somebody create a beer on one occasion, and it was just like a word of just support and how's it going. And even knowing that when the girls went north, when restrictions were relaxed a bit more, that somebody were looking out for them and just making sure they were okay and stuff. And all that is born out of the club, because if we were turning up there in 1990, we wouldn't have had all that sort of environment and support and everything else. And equally, Fran, Grace and Bethany have been able to go back independently since of their own, and catch up and reconnect with people and have another group of friends there, and they don't need me playing cricket or me and Fran going down, as an excuse to go there themselves anymore. So it's been fantastic in that sense, yes.
And also, going back to the community, and you think how it was when we started going down and how it's evolved, and you don't realise the friends that you're making at the time are lifelong friends, and you might not see them every day, you might not have seen them for years, but when once I've been through my cancer treatment and you start talking to other people, again, not naming names, but there's other people from the club that I've recently been in contact with over the last couple of years that they're either going through their own cancer treatment, and you're just there for each other. You all of a sudden you're there, and just helping to support and give advice, or yeah, when I was on that treatment, this really helped, or that, and we might not have spoke to each other for years, but it doesn't matter.
No,
Well,
no, it doesn't. It's they, like you said, it's just friends for life when you get into a community like it is. I mean, the story that you've told today, all four of you, really, it's just outstanding. I find it really quite touching that you can talk through this and that people will benefit. They definitely will benefit just from listening to you. Which has got to be positive steps, and the way you are now, the way you're handling everything. So I'd just really like to thank the four of you for coming on and going through this story. Joe Martin will sort out, the editing of it as best we can, but I can't thank you enough, to Gary, Fran, Bethany and Grace. I really appreciate it. I'll go round just to see if anyone's got any last comments before we finish. I'll end up with you, Joe Martin, because I just want to have a little 2 minutes about cricket. So, Gary, final words from yourself?
Yeah, thanks for the therapy session, Jez. It's been absolutely wonderful.
It really has been therapy.
Yeah, no, seriously. This platform, I think, and has sort of given us and the club a chance just to sort of do a few things and connect with a few more people and just update stuff in general. So yeah, thanks for pulling it all together and giving everyone a chance to just bring some of the stuff that we mentioned and from time to time all together into one story.
Yeah, well, I've, as best you can enjoy something like this. It's been a really good, eye opener for me, and to listen to, to the journeys you've been on. Bethany, any final points from yourself before I go to your mum and then Grace and Joe?
Just thank you for the invite and also the opportunity of spreading awareness, because there's no other reason that we want to talk about any of this other than to make people aware, to check themselves for early detection, but also to spread awareness of not just for breast cancer, all cancers, but I know there'll be many people listening. It's not just about if they've been through it themselves, but everybody knows someone that is going through something or has been through something, and it affects everybody differently. And if what we've discussed here today can help anybody, then I just really, really hope that that's the case. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, you're welcome, and here to that. Fran, your final points?
I can't quite believe that all four of us are sat here, all it being dotted around the world, talking about what we've just gone through over the last 5 years. It turned our world upside down, and at times we really didn't know how this was gonna be, watching your child go through something like that. But we can honestly say, we're at the other side, and we're now thriving and enjoying that new how you look at life differently and appreciate absolutely everything. And I think Gary mentioned it yesterday when we said, talking about what we might chat about or what we might want to share, and I think we've shared a lot. But what we do this campaign, and when we get an opportunity to be involved in it, is literally, it's awareness to check yourself and go and address anything if it looks different. But also, if you are wanting to donate anything, it's not, if you do want to donate anything to any cancer charities, the main one that needs working is secondary breast cancer, because at the moment, like Gary said yesterday to me, primary breast cancers, the science is moving really, really quickly. It needs to pick up on secondary breast cancer, because a lot of people don't realise that secondary breast cancer is incurable. You can sustain it for quite a long time, but there's still not a cure. So that's the next big thing. I'm sure it's in the pipeline. In fact, there's a lot of people that talk about it. So if you ever get an opportunity to focus on any sort of charities, it's for secondary cancer charities, really. But yeah, It's just been amazing to sit back. I'm looking at Bethany on the screen, and when I look, how proud I am of her, and Grace. How she's, we've all been through so much, and we're coming out the other end.
Yeah.
Thanks to the Lowerhouse community, just for keeping us all in your thoughts and looking after the girls when they came up, when they'd know where to go. Yeah, it was great.
No, it's fantastic. Thanks, Fran. Grace, have you got any little words for us before we shoot off? I'll probably see you this summer at some stage down there. But
no, just thanks for letting me sit in. And it's not, it's not about me. I'm really proud of these two, and my dad as well, for just being living proof that there's life after all of this, and that that it's just it's not like Mum said earlier on in the chat, like it's not if you're lucky, it's not a death sentence anymore if you have that horrible news, if you have the early detection. And up the house.
Here we go. Good lass, up the house. Good lass. Joe Martin, have you anything you want to? I just want to ask a few bits about cricket. Anything you want to say about this last hour and a half?
It's been fantastic. Thanks for organising, Jez. Fantastic facilitation as ever. The Moorhouse family are amazing people. So thank you for sharing everything that you've spoken about tonight. Grace, the decking needs repainting.
Okay.
So,
I charge £50 an hour now, so I'll send you an invoice.
Christ. Well, let's Dan sort that.
All right.
And yeah, no, I just think that if you really can listen to the messaging from Fran and Bethany, please do everything you can and make sure that you stay safe and kind of check and if you need to go and see someone, go and do it, even if you don't think it's anything. That was yes.
Probably contribute anything to
well, there we go.
So
cricket, Jez. Sorry.
Yeah, anything to report from the club? No, Dukes normally tells us nothing at all.
No, I don't have any. I don't think I have anything to report. What would you like to know?
Is there any official news about any players that might be coming back to play that moved away to the other side of the world? Is that official or not?
Hassan Khan's not coming back. Oh, no, Wall's not coming back to play.
Oh, no.
I don't know, Jez. Honestly, you're asking the wrong person.
Can you believe that, Gary?
How are nets going, Joe?
Yeah, they're okay.
Good turnout.
The first week was a good turnout.
Right.
The second week, we're flagging a little bit, but they'll be there.
You're flagging after 2 weeks.
Well, I was there,
I'm not out.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those nights. I'm sure there'll be lots there this week.
I'm sure. So, let's conclude the episode. Thanks ever so much to everyone who's contributed to this. If people want to get in touch, just contact myself or Gary through whatever means. You'll have our details. We've got the Twitter account if people want to direct messages about anything in this, any support around it or any help. Please seek it out. Don't forget to subscribe and like and everything else that you do with the Housecast podcast. And don't forget, we need to support our sponsors for the podcast and also for the players. All the players are now sponsored, so please try and support the sponsors. And thanks very much for everyone. And listen to the next episode, which will be the March draw. And we will look to be having a guest on the build up to the season because Joe Martin never contributes to it. So thanks everyone and goodbye.
Well, hold on, Jez. I contribute to the other stuff.
Yeah, you do.
Order! Send Moorhouse to save the house!